Venezuela boat surrounded by U.S. Navy ships, no escape. The sea was quiet that night, a heavy blanket of silence pressing against the small wooden boat as it drifted far from the Venezuelan coast. On board were families, mothers clutching children, fathers holding hands worn from labor, teenagers staring into the horizon with restless eyes. They weren't smugglers, nor fighters. They were simply people searching for hope, trying to escape hunger and desperation that had gripped their homeland. At the helm was Mateo, a fisherman whose strong arms once hauled in nets heavy with fish but who now carried a different weight, the responsibility of steering souls toward safety. But suddenly, beams of light cut through the darkness. The low rumble of engines echoed across the waves, and fear shot through everyone's chest. Towering silhouettes appeared, encircling the tiny vessel. It was the United States Navy, ships armed, massive, and unyielding. "We're surrounded," someone whispered. Panic rippled like wildfire. Children cried. A woman fainted. Mateo tightened his grip on the wheel, his heart pounding like a drum. There was no escape. A booming voice rolled from the loudspeakers, "This is the United States Navy. Cut your engine and prepare to be boarded." Mateo raised his trembling hands and shouted back, "Please. We're not criminals. We're just people. We have nowhere else to go." His voice cracked, breaking under the weight of desperation. He braced himself for arrest, for chains, for the end of the fragile dream these families carried. But then something unexpected happened. As the Navy vessel drew closer, a single spotlight found Mateo's face. He could see uniformed men standing at the rail, watching silently. Among them, one officer, a young man with strikingly calm eyes, lifted a hand to signal a pause. He leaned toward the loudspeaker and asked, his voice steady yet surprisingly gentle, "Are there children on board?" Mateo's answer came in the form of a sob. He pointed to the cluster of little ones wrapped in torn blankets, their faces pale with fear. The officer was quiet for a long moment. The crew around him looked uncertain, some frowning, others shifting as though wrestling with orders versus conscience. Then the officer spoke again. "Hold your course." What followed shocked everyone. Instead of turning them back, the Navy ships formed a protective ring, not to trap them, but to shield them from rough waters ahead. Over the radio, Mateo heard the officer give quiet instructions, "Escort them. Make sure they reach safe waters." Tears spilled freely down Mateo's weathered face. He whispered to those around him, "They're helping us. They're protecting us." The panic that had gripped the passengers turned slowly into awe, and then into something brighter, hope. Mothers hugged their children tighter, fathers closed their eyes in silent gratitude, and for the first time in months, the air filled not with fear but with the possibility of tomorrow. Hours later, as dawn painted the sky with strokes of gold and pink, Mateo looked back at the towering ships. They had guided the small boat into calmer waters closer to shore where humanitarian aid waited. Before pulling away, the officer raised his hand in salute. Mateo, overwhelmed, pressed his palm to his heart. In that silent exchange, no words were spoken, but everything was understood. The Navy could have turned them away. They could have treated them as intruders, as burdens, as statistics. But instead, they chose humanity over protocol, compassion over indifference. And that single choice transformed despair into dignity. As Mateo stepped onto solid ground with his people, he whispered a prayer not just for his passengers but also for the strangers in uniform who had seen them not as enemies, but as human beings. Because in a world divided by borders, politics, and fear, sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness to remind us, the sea belongs to everyone, and so does hope.